RBLR Sports.
Hello, everyone out there in Tampa Bay and beyond. This is James Knowles coming at you for the RBLR Sports podcast, specifically tonight covering the Rowdies like I usually do. And I am here tonight with my usual co-host, Carlos. How are you doing, Carlos, this evening? We were supposed to record last night. I will say this is my fault. We'll get to it in 2 seconds. But, Carlos, how are you doing on this Tuesday night?
Good, James. I'm good. I'd be better if, we left San Antonio with a point, but we'll talk about that later on. Every day I'm reminded about how massive the Rowdies are. My friend who recently moved out to San Francisco, California, basically the opposite side of the country from the Tampa Bay area, to the other Bay Area. He told me that he's from Buffalo, so no relation to the Tampa Bay area other than being my friend. Told me one of his new coworkers and him somehow ended up talking about the Rowdies, and that his new coworker is a distant Rowdies fan. He's gone to a game a couple times when he's been in the Bay Area. So shout out to that guy. That's fun. It's always fun to hear about some random Rowdies connection or a Rowdies fan from, still the same country, but quite literally the opposite side. So that's fun. Shout out to that guy. Shout out to Jeff for finding him. But James, like we talked about before we started going live today, lots of new stuff happening in the Rowdies. New coach, new tactics, new jersey, not the state, but the kit. We can talk about that in a second too. I want to get your thoughts. It seemed like it got generally positive feedback. Actually, James, that's what we'll lead in the episode with. First of all, how are you doing? Second of all, give me your thoughts on the new kit. It looks pretty good on TV.
Yeah, so I am doing well. As I said, I will quickly point out that we were supposed to record last night on Monday because the game this week is on Wednesday, and that's generally when we prefer to do it. However, my wife and I are preparing for a trip abroad. We are leaving this weekend, so unfortunately, we had to do a whole bunch of stuff, and the best time to do it was last night. I apologize that we're doing this because when the episode comes out on everybody's feed, it will generally be on Wednesday, the day of the game. So you don't have a ton of time to listen to it.
That's why you should be listening live every week.
There you go.
Tuesdays, but if there's that Wednesday game, we go Monday. Although, James, we talked about this might be the last Wednesday game of the season, unless
it might be the last Wednesday game unless knockout round games in the Jaeger Cup appear later on. So we will see obviously how things turn out as the rest of the season goes along. But so yes, I quickly apologize for that. We'll move past it and we'll just get into the show tonight, and we'll talk about, first of all, the jersey. There is a lot of hype around the jersey online. I think that a lot of people were pointing out specifically that when they heard this or that about, little teasers here and there, everybody was reminded of the prior kit that was the Volt, which was a very controversial among Rowdies fans. You either hated it or you loved it. My wife was in the latter group, so she was one of the lone people arguing for it. But this is one that I think a lot more people are going to enjoy. I think a lot more people have said that they like it so far. So at least there's that. And then, if I'm not mistaken, our producer Eureka is actively looking into purchasing one, but he will probably correct me if I'm wrong on that one. Either way, I thought it was pretty good. I think that we looked good on the field. It was weird that we were the away team in black in San Antonio. I feel like that was one of their home colors in the past. I think we have somebody from San Antonio in the chat here, so he can correct me on that one. Yes, Harry Austin, exactly, who points out this lovely fact about San Antonio pulling it out. But so regardless, I will say I think that the jersey is pretty good here, and I think that it's an interesting way as well to get us into a new era, which is, of course, under a new head coach, something that we need to get into when we actually talk about the game itself. Carlos, I've given, I guess, a general view of my opinion. What is your opinion of it?
I thought for a third jersey, I think it's great. I will say I'm not really sure I buy the whole. I always love like the jersey explanations, or even like logo explanations, or like the badge. When there's a rebrand or something. I'm not really sure I buy this one about it being like, like representing the lightning in the air. I'm not. I see it, and I don't really see the lightning there. I see a lot of stripes and chaotic, whatever. It looks good for like. I'm not saying it doesn't. I'm not really sure I bought that visualizer or that guide there, but I think it's a great third kit. I definitely want to get my hands on one. I'll be looking out for one for sure. Yeah, solid, great third kit. I think if you want, like, you have our beautiful white home kit with the hoops, and you have the green one that we seem to wear away more often than not. Maybe the New Jersey looked a little Lexington-ish, Harry. But again, yeah, James, that was kind of weird. I didn't really notice that until you pointed that out, wearing black in San Antonio when it seems to be like their main color.
Yeah, I was just, I will say that threw me off a couple of times while I was watching the game, because I would, look away at my phone while I was trying to do whatever, look back, and I'd be like, oh, right. Okay. So, yeah, that was just a little funny anecdote from there.
Yeah.
But regardless, let's get into the real game itself here, Carlos. Quickly beforehand, like and subscribe to us on YouTube, any major podcast platform, and wherever you are on social media, please follow us at RBLR Sports. We are on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Facebook. Where you are, we are too. Let's do the quick recap, Carlos, and then we'll actually talk about what the game looked like on the field itself.
Yeah. James, no surprise, we've got Bondre back in net. Ken BC got the start in the Jägermeister Cup game against Naples, but looks like he might be our cup goalie if that's what we're rocking with. Bondre back in net for the regular season matchup against San Antonio. A tough matchup to come back to after a good win in Naples. Bondre in goal, White in front of him with Lasso and Guillen making up that back line. Lasso getting another start here after kind of being on the bench for the last few games. Van Kaziel and Bodley were your wing backs again, with Alvarez, Hilton, and Crisostomo being in the middle. Alvarez being that more attacking mid behind Rubens, Pasillas, and of course Manu Arteaga, who both had unfortunately quiet nights after a really great showing in Naples. That momentum didn't really carry into this one, unfortunately, and we wouldn't help our case when Lasso picked up his second yellow, a red card, late in this one, in the 67th minute, I believe. We would have to hold on with 10 players all the way through to stoppage time, when we would give up a goal in the 95th minute, I believe. It was super unfortunate. We kind of reached the original 4 minutes of stoppage time that was given by the ref. Some classic time wasting by the team that wants to get out of there. And the ref decided to add one more minute at the back end of it. Of course, right after he does that, San Antonio goes on and gets the winner, just as the Rowdies seem to be kind of ready to close things out and go home with a point, get ready for Hartford. Rowdies walk out of there with nothing, James. Debut for the new coach, debut for the new jersey. Same type of result? Is that kind of harsh? Maybe. Tough opponent, tough place to play away. We know San Antonio to be one of the top teams out west at the moment. So maybe this is a result we should have expected. Certainly some positives to take out of it. I think we would have come into this episode with a bit more of a positive tone if we did believe there at one point, but we can still touch on those positives and look ahead, see kind of where we saw different tactics, different improvements. We'll get into all of that in just a second. Unfortunate L, 1-0 loss to San Antonio, stoppage time winner in what's always a tough place to play. By the way, that's the first win between either of us in the San Antonio FC era. It's just been straight draws in the 4 matches we played against them. So
interesting fact. I did not know that.
Yeah, so that's a fun fact. You'd have to go back to the Scorpions days, I believe, to when there was actually a win between either of the teams.
I love their old mascot, I will say.
Yeah. Let's go back to some of those. Scorpions, Railhawks, Roughnecks. Yeah. I don't like the FC stuff. Keep U.S. soccer wacky and goofy. James, standings didn't change too much. Charleston did move up top, though. Other than that, you're not looking at a ton of different change. The Eastern Conference is still tight as ever. Charleston did play an extra regular season game, so Louisville has that game in hand in second place with 37 points. Big gap between second and third place, Loudoun, with 27 points. Behind them, North Carolina with 23 points. Pittsburgh with 21. Detroit with 20. And then Indy with 20. And Birmingham Legion with 18. I ran through all of those because I want to point out that gap again between second and third. It's really interesting how despite, the crazy season the Rowdies have had, nowhere near what we want for the 50th year anniversary season, for any season really. It's really interesting how I think in part because of Charleston and Louisville's, frankly, dominance this year in the Eastern Conference, that big gap between second and third has allowed for not that many points to be separating the Rowdies from that 8th place playoff spot still, right? I mean, we got that win against Naples in the Jägermeister Cup. Unfortunately, that doesn't give you points in the league. Despite that, we're still 7 points out of playoff contention, which is insane to me. A few wins, things start to turn around. You really just need to get one. And that's why this one against Hartford tomorrow is so, so important. We talk about it just in a bit. Later on, we got to talk about San Antonio first. Okay, out west, San Antonio FC. You're new, not new. They were in first place already. First place team. Or wait, maybe they weren't. Whatever.
I think New Mexico was.
Yeah. Long story short, San Antonio FC is in first place. Tulsa has 2 games in hand on them with 25 points. They're doing, I think, surprisingly well for me, by the way. New Mexico United behind them at 25 points. El Paso with 23. Phoenix with 23. Neil Collins is Sacramento Republic, trying to find their form of kind of start to put things a bit together. 23 points for them, 6th place. Monterey Bay, 22. And Las Vegas Lights still hanging on to playoff spots after having an okay start. They're still there in the mix with 18 points. Western Conference is pretty interesting, James, especially that middle part. There's not that many. Actually, I mean, all the way to the top, obviously, with San Antonio having 27 points. There's not a ton of space separating these teams. So that could be a more interesting race to watch than the Eastern Conference this year, with Charleston and Louisville seemingly locking it up already. Okay, that's all the USL mumbo jumbo. That's what happened this weekend. There's some good results, some fun matches. Sacramento had a great showing. Who else played well? I don't know. We can talk about that later on. Doesn't matter. There's a USL show for that. It's called the USL show. RBLR Rowdies, James. We're here to talk about the Rowdies. This one was a frustrating one. Let's get into the game a bit. I'm sure Harry is thrilled, obviously. But for us in green and gold watching this at home, or if you were there, not a blast. Wasn't the most thrilling game. Neither team was really showing out all that much. Bondre was forced to make one big save all game. It was a big save. For the record, it was a great save. It was kind of a point-blank shot. The San Antonio attacker didn't really have much time to really put much direction on it. He just kind of put it at goal, but Bondre's great positioning was there to, thwart that chance. Good save from him to keep it 0-0, right? Other than that, actually, I want to fact check myself. I think I saw this on the Rowdies recap that they put on their website. Yeah. San Antonio's first of 2 efforts on frame came in the 21st minute, what I just mentioned, when Agudelo fired a first-time strike center of the box. That was stymied by Rowdies goalkeeper Ethan Bondre. San Antonio didn't register another shot on goal until a stoppage time winner, over 70 minutes later.
That is frustrating.
That's a heartbreaker. I mean, and you could feel it that way too. It didn't occur to me until I read that was the case, but you could feel that neither team really was throwing too much at goal. For me, I felt like a draw was deserved by both teams in this one. And I'm biased. Obviously, that would have been a positive result for us at this point in the year. But I felt like it would have been fair. But it's not a fair sport, James. We fell asleep at the end. Rowdies lose 1-0. I wanted to point that stat out to really kind of drive that nail into the heart of everyone listening here. Some different changes and tactics, maybe some good signs. High pressure that we haven't really seen from the Rowdies this year. That maybe tired folks out. I don't know. I don't know what the guys are thinking. It was fun to see Arteaga running around up there. He wasn't really one that I ever imagined would be someone that kind of thrives in a pressure kind of tactic, right? He doesn't seem like someone that can run for that long in the way that kind of strategy requires, but it seemed like he was doing it well. Midfield was a little sleepy. So, James, I'm just pointing out a lot of themes I saw in this one. Give me your thoughts. Do you see any positive changes, any positive signs under Coach Dom Casciato? Have we determined how we say his name properly yet?
I guess, we will eventually, not for a while, but we will eventually have a chance to ask him in person. So maybe that'll be the best opportunity to do so, unless any Rowdies actual any Rowdies people are watching or listening to this, maybe they can let us know. But
No,
otherwise, we'll probably just have to wait.
I mean, we always hear about someone from the Rowdies watching the pod. I mean, if you're listening to this live, can you let us know? I don't want to get the name wrong. I feel like that's messed up for me as a, highly credentialed and reputable reporter of this massive club. I got to get the name of my coach right. But James, what'd you see under Coach Dom, let's say, in his debut with the Rowdies?
Yeah, we'll keep it with Coach Dom. That makes it a little easier, right? And I just want to shout out Harry Austin, who is watching this from San Antonio. Harry's been in the comments so far. Yeah, he agrees with you about the draw, and obviously that would have helped you and me in our prediction standings, but that's a separate issue. Harry, I don't know what the emoji is that you said in your last comment, but we'll just move on from that. Yeah, I think that there were definitely good signs. You already mentioned high pressure in moments that I think that we did. I think that we looked well doing that. Looked good doing that, whatever phrase I'm trying to work into this sentence. But yeah, I think that we did well over stretches of this game. I think that there were a couple of things that I wanted to highlight that were a little weird. So possession statistics, 64% to 36% in favor in San Antonio. That's not crazy. I mean, it is their home ground. And we aren't always a team that will necessarily keep high possession. Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. It changes on the opposition, and it changes on exactly what we're trying to do. So, I'm not too worried about that specifically. One thing that I did actually see that stood out as a little off was that our accurate passing percentage was only 75%. So I don't know if we were doing anything slightly differently from one week to the next that the players weren't connecting on, is what I'm trying to say. I don't know if they weren't fully up to speed on exactly what their new instructions were, and maybe they were missing a couple passes. So maybe that played into it. 75% is good, but for instance, San Antonio's was 85% accurate passing percentage. So just keep that in mind. And we only ended up with 2 shots on target all game out of, I think, 9 overall. So not the best there either. We've seen better, I think, in those categories and others, probably better in terms of how they measure our out of possession countering play. So trying to win the ball up in their half. I don't remember the names of those specific statistics, which is why I was stumbling there. But yeah, probably something that the Rowdy staff will have to figure out as they move on, and hopefully iron out at the same time. It is a new staff for specifically the head coach, but it is a new, probably new tweaks, slightly new system. Even if the players are still lining up in generally the same places, maybe they need to generally attack new parts of the field, or they need to put their heads up and look in different positions. Like I remember that Lewis Hilton set up one good chance by looking up and immediately looking over the San Antonio back line. And that was a really good little play. Just to watch the highlights before we get started here, that's where I saw that one. And I was reminded, oh yeah, we did really well. For San Antonio, I think that they were also doing generally pretty well in this game, but I think that they were lacking for large stretches, not always, obviously, but for large stretches, I think that they were lacking that last killer instinct that we have seen from them, especially when they had Jorge Hernandez on the field. So naturally, with him not being on the field, maybe there is that little bit of difference where Nicky Hernandez can't quite do all of the passes that we have seen Jorge do, and those aren't brothers, but yes, they are playing in the same position generally. And Luke Hawkinson ultimately did benefit from their late on cross over into our box, and that's where they actually did get all of the plays right leading up to it. And I think that unfortunately, with the stoppage time that we were given, and with the probably just the idea that the game is just about done here. We're almost through this one. We've almost secured a point. Maybe a couple of players weren't the quickest to react. And I think on that play specifically, we were obviously, it's nothing revelatory to say here, but we were second to a couple of those. and we were too late to react to their quick play off of the throw-in, the header to the player who laid it into the path of, who got the assist? Whoever got the assist from Aaron, that beat Aaron Guillen to the ball. It was Luis Paredes. Thank you. But yeah, Luis Paredes beat Aaron Guillen to the ball on that one. And that's not just down to speed or anything. Unfortunately, it was also reaction time. And obviously, on the other side of things, Luke Hawkinson was wide open in the box. So those are two small breakdowns. But overall, like I said, I did think that the Rowdies were playing well. It's really unfortunate that they gave up the goal that they did. And it's really unfortunate, obviously, that it came when it did. We had no time naturally to try and win anything back. But signs of progress here and there. If we have to start breaking down exactly what the little tweaks that we see between one week to the next are, I think that we're probably gonna need a little bit more time to do that, and hopefully get a couple more of a sample size before we actually say that anybody's doing something that's meaningfully different. The other big thing, of course, a weird red card for Forrest Lasso. Carlos, I don't know your opinions on this one. I thought that the red card itself I thought the second card was not, like, even if you have a yellow card, which he did, I don't know that is a first yellow card. Like, I don't know. What was your opinion on that specifically? I hate to get bogged down in just calls on the referee. I think that's cheap radio, if you will, which we're not on the radio, but still, it is cheap to spend time doing that. But I thought that it was a weird call. It reminded me of when we were getting a bunch of weird calls against us in the first half of the season.
No, honestly, it looked pretty clear to me. Like, the more I looked at it, the more it just seemed like, okay, well, first put aside whether it's a yellow or not, or even if it's a foul. Like, I think you have to be much smarter than that when you're on a yellow. You're on a yellow. You are playing a game that's so defensively focused, like structurally focused. Like, I'll talk about this in a second too. I loved structurally. We looked great. Like, there wasn't really anything getting by us until the very end, right? And that one Agudelo chance, we were seconds away from our first shutout of the regular season, second shutout of the season as a whole, which would have been clear improvement, because you're talking about getting a first shutout in the game before this one against Naples, right? So back-to-back shutouts, you're talking about a very serious improvement. You're on a yellow, Forrest Lasso, and he, veteran of the game. He's been around the block quite a few times. And this is just kind of something that you saw last season a bit with Forrest Lasso. I thought that, he had struggled picking up a couple silly reds or unfortunate yellows. I thought this was just a moment of needing a bit more calm and presence, right? I do think it was a foul, and I do think it would have, maybe if you're taking into consideration the fact that it would have been a second yellow, that's, maybe you slow up there. But I think, if it's a first yellow, it looked like a yellow to me. He dove in pretty hard, missed the ball because San Antonio's guy got there first. So he whiffed on the ball and just went, shoulder tackle into him midair, dropped him. And it's going to be it's going to look a lot more exaggerated because of Forrest Lasso's size too.
That is actually one of the bigger problems in these specific situations. He's a big guy, and generally somebody's going to look like they're getting bullied, even if that isn't the case, which maybe sometimes it is.
Yeah. In this case, it looked like he got tanked. I'm just looking at the highlight again. He just got open field tackled. It would have been, textbook if you're breaking up a pass in the NFL. But that's not really what you were looking for in this moment, in my opinion. There wasn't really a need to go in like that. There wasn't, you weren't the last guy. You had guys behind you. You could slow up on going up for that header and be totally okay defensively, structurally, right? I think, maybe he just forgets he's such a large dude sometimes. Then that it's going to come across a bit rougher. I do believe just a second yellow is only. I think it is just 1 game suspension though, versus a direct red, which is typically 2, unless the USL changed something. So good news. Hartford's not great and they don't score a lot of goals. So, and we've been playing, with Lasso coming off the bench for several games. So I don't think it'll affect tactics or anything too much. But in this game, obviously you're playing 23 minutes plus 4 minutes of stoppage time, 27 minutes down a player, not ideal in a game where you've been so, again, structurally and defensively sound. It really threw a wrench into something that was honestly like a good thing. We had a good thing going defensively. The midfield in an attacking sense wasn't really doing a ton, but they were cutting off passing lanes defensively. Like we had a good thing going in that sense. And I think that's just a really unfortunate way to kind of start to unravel things. And even then, again, tactically and defensively sound for most of those 24 minutes. And then again, the last 30 seconds, it kind of, you throw it away. So again, unfortunate. But I think that is a pretty interesting positive to point to. It's hard to say like, we almost had a shutout and that should be a positive. But again, in a moment where it's like you're at the end of the game, like basically had it, like you were seconds away from back-to-back shutouts, which would have been a clear improvement versus earlier in the year. And even just, earlier this month or last month, right? Or not earlier this month. Earlier this month we played in Naples, but last month, right? I think that was one of my more optimistic outlooks the day after. After I took some time to be pissed, I woke up the next day and I was like, that's something that we can point to, something that clearly and visibly was working, right? Defensively, there's something good there. We're playing away to one of the best teams in the Western Conference, currently the first place team in the Western Conference, who scores a good amount of goals. Obviously, you have to be in first place. And we kept them to 0, even doing so with 10 players up until what was virtually the last kick of the game, right? So take that as a positive. We've talked a lot about, having positive games and then coming on here and losing and then being like, oh, well, we played well, but we still lost, right? So
right.
It feels a little bit like that, but new coach, right? That's a factor you got to throw in there as well. I'm hoping the positives here carry over and that we kind of see more of the Naples, Manu Arteaga, and Rubens Pasillas than we did the San Antonio version of them, if that makes any sense.
I think that's a fair thing to say.
Yeah, not that they had a ton of chances, but like in particular, I think Woobs has like such a knack for goal that sometimes it's tunnel vision, which can be good in some instances. But in cases like in games like this where there's not a lot of space, it can be helpful to look up, I think, and find a guy trailing, right? He had, especially in that first half, he had one, honestly, a good shot. It was a shot that was driven low. It's like the left post, and it was wide. Honestly, a decent shot. It was a really tight angle, but he had a couple guys trailing. And they could have been in a better spot to finish, right? You're talking about a different game if he makes that pass. The highlights here somewhere. I'd go back and find it.
We did have a couple of good chances that obviously would have put us in better stead for later on. But yeah, it's not like we weren't creating, and it's not like ultimately for large portions of the game we weren't successfully defending San Antonio. Both of those things are true. We were creating a couple of good chances, not enough, let's say, but good chances, and we were doing a pretty good job defensively for the vast majority of things. Yeah.
And where some of our more interesting and clearest chances that just never crystallized they came out of that high press that we really hadn't seen this year from the Rowdies. It's kind of a new approach. It seems like something that Dom likes to run, based on what I've read about him and his time in Omaha. It seems like something that could work. I would be a little bit concerned as to the players' stamina and ability to carry that out for large portions of the game. But if we're healthy and we have guys that can come off the bench and continue that, then I guess you're in good business. Obviously, we had a pretty full bench in this game. Fernandez, Moon, Bassett, they all came off the bench, right? Those are, frankly, great substitutes to have coming off of your bench. If you want to keep running like a high press situation like that, it's going to drain some energy. Those are definitely guys that would be assets. Castellanos came on later on, but that was, I think, because of the Lasso red card. What else we see in this one? Yeah, I think those were where you saw some of your best chances, but you didn't really we didn't really lead that into a ton of shots on goal. In fact, we only had 2 in this game. We talked about San Antonio not having a lot of chances. They didn't. That's still true. We didn't really talk about how the Rowdies also didn't really have a ton of chances. I think officially, look at the stats. 9 shots over the course of the game, 2 shots on target. FOTMOB gave us 1 big chance, quote unquote. I would be interested to see what they considered as the big chance. I would assume it's that Forrest Lasso corner.
Yeah, I wasn't sure myself, but I was making actually pretty much the same assumption.
Yeah, I would assume, and this is something that happened early second half, 50th minute. If you recall, corner kick, Lewis Hilton getting chirped by the very strangely set up San Antonio supporter section in the corner, but whatever. Lewis Hilton whipping in across. Forrest Lasso there actually gets great positioning on this one. And gets in front of his defender and puts a foot on the ball. Pretty rare for a Forrest Lasso corner if he's making contact with the ball with his head. And honestly, gets a great look at goal. Puts the ball on frame towards the bottom left of the goal. Kind of takes a bounce in the middle. San Antonio's keeper makes a really, really impressive save and keeps the game 0-0 here. I would assume that's the best chance we had all game. I would assume that's what I would assume that's what FOTMOB is saying was our big chance, because I saw that as our best chance of the game, or at least clearest look on goal, your highest XG chance, if you will. But the ones that don't make the highlight reels are, turnovers forced by Wubens and Arteaga getting high up the field, putting some pressure on. It was honestly, we were catching San Antonio a bit off guard, and I don't think they were ready for that early on in the game. It could have led to a goal with a bit more patience, and a bit more patience could have led to a goal early on because the pressure was working, but it seemed like we weren't expecting the pressure to work. Like we weren't ready for the ball to fall back into our hands, metaphorically speaking, your feet, right? Rowdies were going upfield and forcing San Antonio into turnovers, but it didn't look like we were ready to take advantage of those turnovers. So that's a positive, but obviously, new tactic. It's going to take some time to get used to that. If we can continue that and successfully turn that into a goal or two, that really does change the dynamic of, the games going forward and kind of what the Rowdies' outlook is. If it works, it's great. So I liked it, hoping it turns into a few goals off of a back line being asleep or a bad pass or something like that. Maybe no. I was going to say the Alvarez look potentially was a high XG chance, but that was he took that from almost half field, right? He had a breakaway chance off of a turnover, but he sent that flying over the net. Again, just a bit more patience needed there. Hold on to the ball for a bit longer, get closer to the goal. You had a lot of time to set it up. I think that's a pretty clear example of, one of those moments where we weren't ready for the ball to bounce back at us after forcing a turnover. So good things. We were creating chances that we weren't creating off of those turnovers in the past, but we weren't doing anything with them. So we'll work on that. I think the game against Hartford is a great opportunity to do that. They're very bad at soccer, and they've gotten a couple of results recently. I still think we're a clearly better team.
I would generally agree.
But we'll talk about that game in just a second. It's a good opportunity. Anything else here? Any other players you want to highlight for, I don't know, a play, something they could have done better? I can't really think of anything else. I'm just looking at the highlights now. There was that one.
Rewatching the highlights again, I did think that Blake Bodley had a chance at a breakaway that did not manifest because his first touch unfortunately led him away from goal. That was one that kind of bothersome there, where we actually did pretty well in the quick buildup. It was one, if I'm not mistaken, trying to think back again, but if I'm not mistaken, that was one of those instances that you had just talked about where we did a really good job of trying to win the ball in a position that already put us at an advantage. And unfortunately, then that broke down with his touch on the run. So, it's difficult naturally, but that's what you're there to do. So that was unfortunate, but still a good example of something that maybe we're going to see a little bit more with the Rowdies doing a high press and putting them under pressure. It's about it. I don't know all of the ins and outs of this, but it's about pressing triggers. When you see that there's a good moment to put the opposition under press and try and get them to give the ball up because you see a good opportunity to move forward. That's what that kind of represented to me, and I hope that we see. Let's get some more of that specific play. I want to see that happen.
But how about, by the way, talking about that play, Guillen was the one that actually made that pass to Bodley, to get downfield. And unfortunately, like you said, Bodley's first or second touch, unfortunately, takes him way wide of the goal. Slightly better touch, and you're in position to take on the keeper one-on-one. Obviously, a higher percentage chance. By the time he, forces that, unfortunately, a bit wide, San Antonio gets two guys back. But Guillen is insane to me in this chance because Guillen was gassed in this game. He ran so much. You're playing with 10 men, and Guillen's a defender, right? This isn't like a midfielder or anything. This guy's sprinting down the field to make this happen and makes that play happen. He gets that pass off to Bodley after I forgot who was tackled and fouled carrying that ball out. I want to say Chrysostom, though. Crisostomo gets the ball and starts sprinting downfield, gets tackled, and the ball falls to Guillen, who lays it off for Bodley. Guillen's still sprinting all the way downfield, gets to the box, and he honestly has a pretty good spot in front of goal, but unfortunately is in a tough angle to actually make a goal out of it when he takes that shot. So shout out to him for making that run. I mean, it's really impressive. Maybe it gassed him a bit too much because by the end of the game, he struggled to keep up on that last chance.
Maybe.
But yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of what you're talking about, right? Like pulling the trigger in the right moment. That's a moment where he saw space and took it. And unfortunately, Bodley's touch betrayed him just a little bit there. So yeah, that's about it. I mean, again, we didn't really create all that much. I would have maybe liked to see Nick Moon in slightly earlier. Nick Moon's been pretty impressive to me when he has gone on the field lately this year. It's unfortunate that we haven't gotten to see Moon and Bodley in together. I was under the assumption this whole time that Moon is like a right, or no, not like he is. He plays in that right wing back slot, right? And he's very good at it. Bodley plays in a left wing back spot. He's very good at it. But recently, whenever we've seen Moon take the field, it usually comes with Bodley coming off the field. I like Van Kaziel. I think, again, he's a great utility player, and he's done his role. He's in a very serviceable fashion. He's a great role player. I'm waiting for the moment where we see Moon and Bodley in together because I think you get much more of an attacking presence on that right side.
I think that Van Kaziel's biggest asset is his defensive ability. Absolutely. And that's why he is capable of playing pretty much across the back line.
So that's interesting. Again, Van Kaziel, fantastic player because of that. Like that gives him a lot of mobility in terms of where he can be on the back line. But I want goals, James. Like I know we struggled defensively, but clearly something's getting figured out back there. We were seconds away from another shutout. We got our first shutout against Naples, so something's getting figured out back there. Great, dandy. But the goals still aren't coming in huge numbers. Coach Dom preaches an attacking style of football, right? We're getting upfield and we're making chances and we're scoring goals. We did in Omaha. They broke the record for goals scored in a single season in League One, and it's rather short history, but still broke the record. They scored a lot of goals. He wants to do that. I'm curious to see if Van Kaziel at that right wing back spot is going to be his continued preference for that, because clearly we know that that's not the most attacking, the best attacking threat we can slot in there, right? Defensively, incredibly sound. But if we're going to, get upfield and score some goals, I wonder if we're going to want to start with Moon and then bring in a Van Kaziel to maybe close out games, right? I kind of like the idea of reversing the order and bringing in Van Kaziel to replace Moon later on in the game. But anyway, That's my thought. That's how I'd start in FIFA and go up 5-0. But I don't get paid to be a coach, so I'm just guessing for now. In the meantime, Pacific Nyangabire, come back to us, please. I have no clue. I mean, I feel like I've forgotten about him. It's been so long. He's still injured. He would be a great asset to have right now, by the way, to kind of slot in at either of the wing back spots or, frankly, even at striker later on. We've seen him slot in at striker. You can throw him in late in like the, I don't know, 80th, 85th minute, sprint downfield, create some chances by himself if you're trying to hold out a game or something. Nyangabire would be a great role player to have right now, even coming back from injury. And maybe, by the way, maybe that's why Moon's not starting. He's still coming back from injury potentially. It's been a little while, so hopefully he's back to 100%, but we really have no way of knowing that for sure.
Right.
Tampa Bay Rowdies lose 1-0 in San Antonio, James, in a heartbreaker. Anything else to add here?
I'm satisfied with everything that we hit on. I do like your idea for Nick Moon and Blake Bodley. I think that you and I have hit on the potential partnership there, or I guess it's not a partnership considering where they play, but we've hit on that for like every other show that we've done the last 2 months, let's say. But cross our fingers, we get to
ever
see
since
that.
they've been here, ever since they got here and San Diego Loyal folded, rest in peace, right? We've heard about this partnership and this dynamic duo of wingbacks that Bodley and Moon were in San Diego, right? I want to see that. Like I've been sold this product and I haven't seen it on the field yet. So hopefully we see it one day. I think maybe we've seen like 5 minutes total of them on the field, like ever. At least that's what it feels like. So one day. Rest in peace, San Diego Loyal. James, man of the match time?
I think we're good to go there.
Yeah. I'll go first. I had a really tough time picking. It felt like this was a game where no one particularly stood out, which can be a good thing, right? The midfield was pretty quiet. Offensively, they couldn't really move the ball up the field too well. Lewis Hilton had an unusually slow game. Alvarez didn't really seem to be clicking as much as he did in this, as much as he did in like a Naples game. He feel like he's still building chemistry with the team, and you could tell in this one. Van Kaziel, fine, right? Like there's a couple players that looked okay. Bodley had that great look later on. I think Wyke, for me, was probably my man of the match. That's who I went with today. Solid in the back line. I feel like we've seen the best out of Lawrence Wyke recently, in a way that like is kind of in spite of how the Rowdies have been playing. We've seen Lawrence Wyke have a pretty good sense of consistency over the course of the season. And I think we've seen the best out of him in the last few games. He got an assist recently too, right? He got that goal at the end of that game against Indy, which was so fun to watch. You see a continued kind of confidence in him. While also, again, we talked about needing to be a smart defender. Wyke had a short history of, struggling with bookings, getting too many silly yellows, eventually leading to a red. He got a yellow in this one, but a more normal yellow, you could say. And he just looked solid on that back line. Again, trying to move the ball up. He was solid. I liked it. I think he's going to continue to keep this form. And I think that's part of the reason why we were able to get a shutout in Naples. Although I think he was kind of more in the midfield in that one. But I think you're going to continue to see the best out of Lawrence Wyke. He's been building something and some good confidence and momentum this season.
Yeah, I think that this is his third overall for all competitions, and all of those have come within the last month. So good stuff from Lawrence Wyke. On my side of the ledger, I went with Lewis Hilton again. Lewis Hilton was the recipient of back-to-back Man of the Match awards, I think, in June. I could go back and check here, but I forget which games it was. It was him and Aaron Guillen for 2 weeks in a row. It went back to with Wyke filling in a couple of those, just as we said. But yeah, Lewis Hilton, I think, had a really good game last night. I think that he showed, in particular, there was that one instance, which I already mentioned. He turned and hit a ball immediately trying to beat the San Antonio back line. I loved that. I would love to see more of that. It was quick. It was recognizing that either there wasn't enough speed maybe to get back for San Antonio's defense, which I think was true, but also they were in a bad position and we had the advantage to beat them there. So I'd like to see that. And I think that he did a really good job of marshaling the midfield in front of him, trying to, when we look like a different team when Lewis Hilton is on the field. I think we said that when he originally returned. And this was another game for me that I felt that, and where there weren't a lot of players that I could offer things for. Lawrence White did get pretty good marks on the defensive side of things, so I'll point that out. Carlos, good shout there. But without other kind of metrics to hit, Lewis Hilton kind of passed the eye test is the way that I feel that I want to describe it. So good stuff for both of them, and I hope that we get more from this English dynamic duo in our defensive unit here. Before we move on, I want to say liking and subscribing is free, but if you think you need some new threads this year, you can support our podcast by heading over to shop.rblrsports.com and checking out all the designs we've got going on there. There will be a link in the description. Carlos is pointing to it now. Actually, what he's pointing to is the promo code, which you can use to get 10% off of your order. That is COYR. If you check out our shop, I just bet you might find something that you could wear to a Rowdies game, a Lightning game, a Sun game, Bucks, whatever. I'm forgetting the Rays. There's all sorts of stuff for all of these teams. So check them out and you can get 10% off your order, again, with COYR. We will see you hopefully at games in some RBLR gear. Carlos, let's do this Hartford away preview. There's a lot going into this game, and I think that there's a lot riding on it because we have our new coach. We're both down at the bottom of the league. It's time to get some results, and I think that this is a good chance to do it.
Yeah. Tampa Bay Rowdies at Hartford, 7:30 p.m. Wednesday, July 16th. It'll be today. If you're listening to this when it's, coming out on the platforms tomorrow, it's tomorrow if you're listening to this live on Twitter, YouTube, wherever we are, or x.com. I will never call it X, by the way. It's ridiculous. We're live and it's listening, and you're listening in the games tomorrow. James, it's a big game for a variety of reasons. Like you said, we're both at the bottom of the table. We need a result badly to kind of make our way up the table again. This feels like, you hear the word 6-pointer a lot. And it's rarely you hear it described at this point in the year, kind of like at the bottom of the table like we are, but it kind of does feel that way because, well, first of all, you don't want to be at the bottom of the table, right? So let's get rid of that. Let's get out of the bottom of the table. Hartford.
That's a good start.
Yeah, we want to take away 3 points from them and get our 3 points and jump them, start to make our way up the table. Big game, right? Let's talk about the implications in a second, but more importantly, I'll talk about Hartford as a team right now. Lots of draws recently. They've got 2 wins in the league, 12 points. They're 1 point ahead of us. They mostly played a 3-4-2-1 formation. Sounds kind of familiar, right? With Anthony Siaha in net behind TJ Prestos, Joe Farrell, and former Rowdy Jordan Scarlett. They have a midfield of Seb Anderson, Beverly Kingola, Jonathan Jimenez, and Emmanuel Samadia behind Deshane Beckford and Michi and Galena. Up top, Mamadou Dieng. It's a guy we've heard around the league for a little bit now. He has 5 goals in all competitions. And Kyle Edwards is actually the leading scorer. Wingbacks Anderson and Samadia lead the team in assists. They're also leading the chance creators. Makes sense. Your wingbacks getting upfield, putting those crosses in. The wings are where they seem to create everything, right, James? This is based off of looking at numbers, James, looking at whoever's leading in terms of creating assists, leading in terms of whoever's creating chances. I haven't gotten to see too much of Hartford, so this is my best guess as to kind of where their strengths are. This is some of your notes. So tell us a little bit about what we can expect from Hartford. We know them not to be great this year, but maybe they're finding a rhythm. I don't know. Tell us.
So the way that they line up, as it said here, is generally a 3-4-2-1. So I think if you can roughly think of where the Rowdies have played a couple of times this season, we have played, you could look at it with Ollie Bassett on the left side, helping out with Blake Bodley and Wubens Passius, and Manuel Arteaga slightly over on the right side. helping out with the right wing back, whoever that is, whether it's Van Kaziel or Nyanga Bire or at times Nick Moon. And generally, Danny Crisostomo can also slide to one or the other and add another number there. They're going to do something relatively similar. And their two central midfielders are going to be Beverly Macangila and Jonathan Jimenez, if it keeps up with what they have been doing. That was, I think, the midfield partnership for the last 3 games, if I'm not mistaken, from what I looked at. So Macangila is a good player. Jimenez, I don't think has as much cachet. He doesn't have like the veteran status that Macangila does in this league. Macangila has been around for quite a while at this point. So just something to keep in mind here. But picture them as playing a little bit of a similar role to Hilton and Crisostomo. It's not going to be the same players, and it's not going to be the exact same roles, and it's obviously, in my opinion, not going to be the same quality. So just keep that in mind. But they are going to be looking for the same players. It's going to be Samadia on the left. It's going to be Seb Anderson on the right. And they will be interacting in similar ways with players who sit behind a striker. So those players recently, again, have been Engelina and Beckford. Kyle Edwards also will start a couple of times. I don't know which of those 3 is going to be the 2 listed behind their striker, but that is generally what it has been. And you'll see a similar pattern again. One of those players will generally interact with the right wing back, who again is Seb Anderson. I assume if it's Kyle Edwards who's starting, he will be more on the right side. And on the left, it will probably be Engelina. We did see Engelina actually cause some problems for us last season when we played Hartford. I don't know if you remember that specifically, Carlos, but his name just stood out as one of the guys that we did not do particularly well with, I'll say. Engelina will probably try and beat you for pace or making runs that kind of cut across the back of the back line so that they don't end up in an offside position. And then I'm assuming that they will look for cutbacks to their striker, again, Mamadou Dieng. So just keep that in mind as we go through this. They have done a relatively good job of that. Also, they have not at the same time, because Hartford is not doing so well. They are better than us, I think, by literally 1 point at the moment. So keep in mind, I do think we certainly, irrefutably, in my opinion, have a better quality roster than Hartford. It is about putting it together. And I think that if we can maximize our ability to create chances, hopefully we get some more attacking play, just like Carlos and I talked about earlier in this episode. If we get some more attacking play, we can put something up against Hartford. Also, I do think that we have the ability against this back line to create a lot of problems. I do not want to impugn any former Rowdies, but I will say that Jordan Scarlett is probably not the best individual player on the ball, technically with the ball at his feet, and he is possibly someone who is vulnerable to giving it up in bad positions. I think that Joe Farrell may be better, or probably more likely someone who's going to clear it out. TJ Prestis, if I'm not mistaken, this is his first year above the MLS Next Pro level. So that's another player that is probably someone who could be a little vulnerable in those positions. Just keep that in mind. If we're going to do this high pressing, something that Coach Dom is known for, something that we saw a little bit in San Antonio, maybe this would be another game to expand upon that. Maybe this would be a game to turn that into a goal or two. I would like it. Carlos, I'm sure, would like it. I know our producer Eureka would like it. He is finally out of the dark in his home. That is a joke for just Carlos, Eureka, and myself. But yes, we are looking to get some more stuff going for the Rowdies moving forward, and we are looking to get everybody out of the dark part of the table, the bottom. All of this, I'm sure, is roughly what I'm trying to say is move this team up. Let's get some goals. Let's get some wins. I want a W out of this one. That's that. Carlos, before we do our predictions, do you have anything that you want to add to my final moments of a ramble here?
Hartford's not great. We've known that this year. They've struggled. They've been our partners at the bottom of the table this year. That being said, like I said, they've gotten a little bit of momentum recently, a few draws and 2 wins in their last 3 games. What's interesting to me is that one of those wins was against the 3rd place team in the Eastern Conference. A very, undeniable 3-0 win at home against Loudoun United. Again, in years past, that might not have meant that much, but this year, I think it's an impressive result. And they followed it up with back-to-back games against Detroit City because of Jägermeister Cup and then league play scheduling, which included a draw at home and then a win away to Detroit. Now, Detroit's not been fantastic this year by any means, so it's not saying like a ton, but they're in playoff position. They're in sixth place. They've gotten some good results this year, and more importantly, it's wins. It's a win, right? For the Rowdies or Hartford, these individual wins like matter a lot right now. So Hartford is maybe in a better spot than we are at the moment, albeit very slightly. But they've certainly got a good little bit of momentum, maybe just like we do. I mean, despite losing this game in San Antonio, the Rowdies, I think we could say, have the most momentum we've had this year. It's a low bar, but we are at a point where we got a shutout, a new coach, you kind of are trying to turn things around, and then you get a solid performance through 93 minutes of the game in San Antonio. I think both teams are kind of coming into this at the same point in their season, right? Trying and maybe starting to turn things around. So I think tomorrow is a great moment to prove that we're the ones that are actually doing that. Hartford are the ones that are kind of just having a 3-game stretch of okay soccer, right? Win against Indy, win against Naples, tough loss against San Antonio. I think we really, really, really need this win. Yeah. And then you're talking about totally different Rowdies, 3 wins in our last 4 games, right? You need this win. You got to start making way up the table. We got that league, that Jägermeister Cup win, but you really need these league points to put yourself in a position to fight for a playoff spot at all. At this point, you still have about half of the regular season left to play, but you're running out of time. So you need to start that turnaround tomorrow, in my opinion, if you want to make something out of this year. I don't buy into the fact that this is a throwaway year, especially when you look at the fact that we're in first place in the Jägermeister Cup group, right? And you look at the fact that we're only, 7 points out of the playoff position, or 8? What was it? Hold on. Let me fact check myself. We're not that far out of playoff position, despite the year we've had. 7 points, right? 2 wins and a draw. Obviously, you need teams to lose in front of you and everything, but I don't really buy into that yet, that it's a throwaway year, that we're just rebuilding for next year. I know you're thinking longer term with Coach Dom, right? Like he's here for the future. But I don't think that means we're throwing away this year. And I don't think the guys in the field believe that either, right? There's still soccer left to play. But if you want to make this season anything, I think it does start tomorrow. So, yeah, let's go and get a win, James. Predictions?
Let's go and get a win. Let's do our predictions. I will give first Eureka's, our producer. Like I said, he has come out of the dark and he has seen the light, which is a 3-1 win to the Tampa Bay Rowdies. That's the bow that I wanted to tie on that. Carlos, what is your prediction?
I'm going to go with, again, Hartford's not really scoring a lot of goals, but they've scored a few recently. It's been like 4 or 5 games since they last didn't actually put a goal in the net. That being said, we're playing solid in the back. I think we're going to get another shutout in this one. I think we're going to win this one 2-0.
2-0. Okay, very interesting. Well, I will say between you and between Eureka, I was leaning towards probably one or the other of those scores. So I'm going to have to split the difference here. And I'm going to say a 2-1 win. A 2-1 win to the Tampa Bay Rowdies. But yeah, that does mean at this point that all of us have predicted a win. So if we get anything but that, nobody gets any points. You hear that, Tampa Bay Rowdies? Go get us some points, and yourselves, of course.
Yeah, I don't care about my points, dog. I want points up this table right now, man. Like we're down in last place. The Rowdies are not a club that's a last place team, like ever, James. This club has put out good soccer in the past. Maybe not the best soccer in some seasons, you're middle of the table, but look, like this is not a last place club. It's just not, right? We cannot finish the season like this. You got half season of soccer left to play. In the regular season, tomorrow you start that turnaround. Tomorrow you continue that turnaround. But if you want to really make your way up the table, I think tomorrow is almost as close to a must win as you can have at this point in the year.
Yeah. I think that's actually, honestly, I do think that's fair. All right. Well, let's move on to our extra time segment. Carlos, you have the first 2 bullet points here, so I will let you take them.
Yeah, I was gonna throw in the Rowdies new kit in here, this black kind of whatever lightning kit we talked about. Already knocked it out at the beginning, so we're not gonna talk about that. Give us your thoughts online, social media. If you're on YouTube, it's always easy to throw a comment in there. On Twitter, it's harder. Give us your thoughts. I'm always interested to hear what people have to say. More interestingly to me than the kits is the news that came out that where was it? Whatever. In the long, never-ending saga of Rays ownership, who, by the way, own your Tampa Bay Rowdies, it seems like there might be an end in sight, and the Rays might be prepared to sell, or Stu Sternberg might be ready to sell the Rays to Patrick Zalupski's group. Patrick Zalupski, he's a developer from the Jacksonville area, but wants to keep the team in Tampa. So that's fun if you're a baseball fan. Super interesting, super big news for all of baseball. But I think more importantly, I'm curious as to what those implications will be for the Rowdies. We know that the Rays, as an organization, own Tampa Bay Rowdies. In my head, that would mean that the purchase of the Tampa Bay Rays also includes the Tampa Bay Rowdies. That would be my guess. I would assume that's right. I'm not sure there's a world where like Stu Sternberg like sells the Rays but not the Rowdies. I'm not sure that's really how that would work. So I don't know. It's just interesting times. I'm happy for the Rays if this actually pans out to be true, because I don't ever want to see one of our sports teams leaving the area. I saw a lot of delusional folks from Orlando claiming that the Rays were going to make their way over to Orlando, and I'm really happy that doesn't seem to be the case. It seems like we're keeping one of our teams. Happy about that. But again, more importantly, for the team that I care about the most in the Tampa Bay area, the Rowdies, there's a lot of unanswered questions. And I think that's natural at this point in this conversation where the sales hasn't even been finalized. But with how the ownership works, being owned by the Rays, I think it just naturally is going to leave a lot of open room for questions and unanswered questions, right? From Rowdies fans. So we'll see. We'll keep a close eye on this. I think there's going to be a lot of things to pay attention to, like just for Tampa Bay sports in general. The stadium conversation for the Rays, right? Like, what does that mean for the home of the Rowdies, Al Lang? What does the future of the Rowdies look like in St. Pete or Tampa, right? Lots of questions. No answers right now. But we know that Patrick Zalupski's group is close to potentially finalizing this purchase of the Tampa Bay Rays, which is pretty groundbreaking, big shaking news at this point in the Rays' history. I saw the sale could be done, quote, as early as September. So just a couple months away. Keep an eye on this. I think there's going to be a lot of things developing over the next month or so. So we're just going to have to be paying close attention to social media, even more so than I was already. Yeah, I'm curious. I think this is one of those cases where we've talked about this in the past, James, is that I think it makes it really kind of interesting for Rowdies fans, because as a collective group, no one really knows what we should be like advocating for, right?
Right.
There's almost not infinite, but it feels like there's infinite possibilities for what's in store for the Rowdies, right? When it comes to where the stadium is, right? When it comes to who actually is owning and operating the Rowdies, right? When it comes to, Al Lang specifically, like, should we be advocating to stay at Al Lang? Is the question, like, are they actually going to build something over Al Lang and tear it down? Most likely not. Like 90+% chance not. Maybe even 95%. Like, unlikely. I'm not sure Al Lang is, the stable future home of the Rowdies, if we're being honest. It's a lovely place, but there's questions around it. It's old, it's run down, it is what it is. It's a beautiful location. But there's questions about where we're going to be playing. The Sun are building a stadium, right? Potentially, hopefully.
Potentially.
Right? Do we share a stadium with the Sun, right? Like, that'd be awesome. I mean, it looks like a beautiful stadium in prime real estate in Tampa. I'd love it. I know maybe some of our St. Pete, diehards would be a little sad to make that drive. But it's a great stadium, potentially, and it looks like a great long-term solution, potentially. I don't know. Literally, who knows? That's the problem. We don't know what we should be advocating for. So for now, let's just keep our ears to the ground and pay attention to the news as it comes out. Who knows, James? The future bright for the Rowdies? Maybe. Hopefully. I just want them to stay in Tampa Bay forever and ever. So whether it's Tampa, St. Pete, in a nice stadium, that's all I want, James. And some trophies, but we'll see.
I think all of that is a fair thing to ask for as a Tampa Bay Rowdies fan.
Yeah.
On the other side of things, this will be probably our last point because it's a relatively quick one, but the Club World Cup is done. Chelsea are champions, honestly, rather surprisingly. Good for them.
Moises Caicedo.
He did do well, and the summer of soccer is not over. You thought that the Club World Cup and the Gold Cup, and am I forgetting another term? I don't know. That was it. No, in fact, it is now the women's turn, and there are, I think, 3 tournaments going on. So the Women's Euro is happening on Fox Sports. The Copa America Femenina is happening on Fox Sports literally right now. Well, I guess at 8 tonight if you're watching this live. So you can put that on and watch that. It is happening, just as Carlos noted, in Quito, Ecuador. I think only in Quito, Ecuador, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And that's a little weird, but fair enough. It's probably easier for the teams, actually, now that I think about it. The Women's Africa Cup of Nations is also happening right now. I don't think I have general access to that. If you have beIN Sports, you should have access to that. I really wish that AFCON and WAFCON were not on beIN Sports because I can't frickin' access those. And the last one is available on FIFA, like their app. And this is the OFC Cup of Nations. So if you're interested in seeing Fiji take on Tonga or other countries like that, the only issue, unfortunately, is that it is not generally at good times for us here in the American time zone. So if you want to get up, if you want to do real literal sicko hours, then get on the FIFA app and you can watch those games. But otherwise, WAFCON, Copa America Femenina, and the Women's Euro are going on. And they're good games, really good stuff. There's a lot. The crowds have been fantastic, at least in Switzerland. Maybe not as much in Ecuador, but hopefully that picks up too.
They've been solid. They had a good crowd for their opening game against Uruguay. Ecuador dropped it they tied 2-2. They came back from down 2-0. They have a game against Peru at 8. It'll be interesting to keep an eye on. They look solid, honestly. The Ecuadorian women's team is they've invested a little bit more into there's a lot of work to be done in women's soccer in Ecuador. But they've invested more recently than they have in the past couple decades, and I think it's putting out some results. Independiente del Valle, the same academy that produced Moises Caicedo, William Pacho, Piero Hincapié, Kendrick Baez, who's one of Chelsea. They've put a lot of emphasis on their women's academy too, and
nice.
It produced the first transfer of an Ecuadorian player with a fee attached to it from club to club to a team in Europe. Pretty cool. Happened last year. Awesome. The team's looking up. It's good soccer. If you want to watch sicko blowout, really crazy 5-5 scores, that's when you turn on the FIFA app and watch the OFC games. Those games are crazy. I've seen they're randomly, they just put up 4-4 bangers, and it's just the craziest thing you've ever seen on the most scenic stadium you've ever seen.
I will absolutely agree with you there. It's incredible to watch those games. Yeah. It's generally one stand, and then you can just see the surrounding island behind it. It's pretty neat.
Beautiful. That's peak soccer. I want to go over there and drink a Modelo and watch Fiji versus Tonga. That's awesome. That was awesome. Yeah.
All right. Well, with that said, I think now we can get everybody out of here. Thank you so much for tuning in, folks. We always appreciate when you do. And if you would, please follow us on all your social medias. We are on Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, Threads, Blue Sky, everywhere on Twitter. If you'd like to get at me, at RBLR James K, you can use the hashtag AskRBLR, or you can reach Carlos
at Carlos TPA10. Come follow me on Twitter. We'll talk about the Rowdies. Like James said, hashtag AskRBLR for anything you want to get on the show. We'll talk about it next week. Hopefully, we're talking about a win and then a big game against Charleston the following week. Get excited for that one. And travel out there if you can. Get your tickets. It'll be a fun one.
There you go. Like and subscribe to our podcast. You can get the full experience on YouTube. And we are also, of course, on Spotify, iHeartRadio app, Apple, and Google Podcasts. I will not be here for the next 2 weeks, but Carlos and Eureka will be helping us cover the Rowdies. So make sure you tune in. And come on, you Rowdies.
I have to do this with Eureka? No.
Thank you for tuning into this presentation by RBLR Sports. On your way out of the stadium, please remember to like and subscribe.